All right. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, Jeet Kune Do Rebel, and welcome to the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast number 36. This is the one about Dan Inosanto talks Jeet Kune Do retrospective. I'd like to thank right off the bat three of my Jeet Kune Do seniors for being the inspiration for doing this. One, Chris Kent, for putting up a whole bunch of articles on his website at ckjkd.com. You can find them there, and he's put them up for the whole world to have access to. And he actually saved me from having to go to and breaking open boxes in my storage unit to find these articles. Secondly, to my other Jeet Kune Do senior, Cass Magda, for actually the suggestion of broaching the suggestion to broach this topic, and so here's hoping that he'll approve of my effort. And lastly, to Jose Fraguas, my Jeet Kune Do senior, for actually writing the book Jeet Kune Do Conversations, from which most of the material for today's broadcast is gleaned. Right. So the Jeet Kune Do Conversations has a bunch of interviews with a number of Jeet Kune Do notables, and actually that book, I'm not denigrating it in any way. It's a fantastic book, and it gives insight, but it is what I call fixed in time. So there's a lot of knowledge in there, and we'll be partaking of a tremendous amount of that knowledge today. So it's still valuable. But there's the Bruce Lee quote that says, knowledge is fixed in time, whereas knowing is continual. So my other Facebook live show, the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues, that's where I attempt to put that Jeet Kune Do maxim into practice. So we have the written material, the fixed knowledge, as in Jeet Kune Do Conversations, and we take advantage of that and we make use of that. But we also have the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues, live ongoing interviews, and that's where we take advantage of knowing, which is continual, if that makes sense, right? So the interview, the Inosanto interview starts out with him being asked when he met Bruce Lee for the first time, which we all know was in 1964 at the Long Beach Internationals, and when was the last time, which was I think early in 1973, right? So a few months before Bruce Lee passed away. Oh, and by the way, we know Bruce Lee passed away on the 20th, but some of you, probably everybody who's watching this or who will watch this, is aware that yesterday, July 24th, was Sifu Dan's 82nd birthday. And so actually today's broadcast is kind of in tribute to his recent birthday. So the question was, when was the first time you met Bruce Lee, and when was the last time you met Bruce Lee? But then the next question after that was, what happened between those two meetings? And Sifu Dan says that he thinks that what happened in between those two meetings changed the martial arts world, which, if I've ever heard one, is kind of an understatement, right? So he makes the comment that Bruce Lee was light years ahead of his time, and his influence on the martial arts world is self-evident. 3 decades ago, he was talking about things that most martial artists didn't understand and even fewer believed. So my question for those of you out there in the I Love Jeet Kune Do world is this: is that still true about Jeet Kune Do? That Bruce Lee was years ahead, and most martial artists didn't understand and even fewer believed, right? So what do you think? Is that still true of the of present day Jeet Kune Do? Are we still ahead of the game in the area of martial arts, or has the rest of the martial arts world caught up to where Jeet Kune Do was at, right? So if you feel like it, comment on that, and I'll re-comment back to you if required, right? The other part of Sifu Dan's answer was this: I can say that his knowledge and skills were far beyond any martial artist of his time. The thing that impressed me most about Bruce was not his skill, but his knowledge. Most people were impressed with his physical skill, but to me, the most impressive aspect was his knowledge. The thing that was amazing about Bruce was that he could beat you with his brain. So I have another question for you. So what do you make of that, right? I say that we should ask ourselves as martial arts students, right? As students of martial art, we should ask ourselves, well, what is it that impresses us most about our teachers? Is it their skill, or is it their knowledge, or is it even possibly a combination of the two? And then if you are a martial arts instructor, because some of the people who tune in to the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast are also martial art instructors, right? So then as a martial art instructor, what do you actually seek to impress your students, right? And if you do, what do you think impresses your students more? Your skill or your knowledge, right? Or instead of trying to impress your students, do you instead seek to convey information to them versus seeking to impress them, right? So that's the second question. And if you guys feel like it, go ahead and comment. I'll get to the comments after we finish up, right? I'll confess to you, when it comes to that knowledge and skill and what have you, I have a private client, somebody who's been training with me for over 3 years, and her observation is that with me, unless it is a Jeet Kune Do topic specifically, or if it's something that is somehow related to Jeet Kune Do, then her opinion is that I have no interest in it if it's not connected that way. And I have an old girlfriend who recently told me that she didn't stay with me back in the day because I never put her number one. I never put her ahead of martial arts, right? Which, so I jokingly said to her, well, maybe you should have started training with me, right? But anyhow, okay. So back to reality, right? So either way, you'll realize that what we're talking about here is that darn concept of balance, which we referenced, I think it was in last week's broadcast, right? That concept of balance, that the yin-yang deal that seems to rear its head whenever and wherever we end up talking about Jeet Kune Do. So here it is again. We're running like hell and seeking that balance between being physically skillful and being mentally knowledgeable, right? Which is also known as being able to do your art, being able to perform your art, but also being able to talk, as in explain your art, right? So more on that topic later. So then another question was, how did you become, and this is to Inosanto, so how did you become Bruce Lee's demonstration student? Right. So again, as most of us know, after the 1964 Long Beach Internationals, Bruce Lee stayed around for a couple of weeks, and they did some demonstrations at different places, right? And so the deal was kind of that Inosanto would assist him, and in exchange, Bruce Lee would teach him lessons, which at that time, according to Sifudan, were lessons in modified Wing Chun, right? Because it was 64, so the Jeet Kune Do, the Jeet Kune Do had not yet been conceived, right? But what's interesting, well, one of the things that's interesting is that he says at first he didn't actually like the way that Bruce Lee demoed, because they didn't really rehearse anything, right? Whereas coming from a Kempo background, they had always rehearsed for demonstrations, right? But I think that if you look on the YouTube at, you can find clips of like Inosanto Academy demonstrations or what have you, and you can kind of tell that over the years he developed a formula for doing demonstrations, right? I know that here in Miami we kind of adopted that idea of no rehearsal for demonstrations. And it gained us this many students over the years that we demoed. Look at this. Yes, absolutely 0 students from using that no rehearsal approach to demonstrations. For us, what it was we use demos as a kind of an extra opportunity to train, right? And as an opportunity to work on the flow, right? So it's like, okay, so we go out there and we do something and we just work on the flow, if you get my meaning. Not last week, I think it was the week before, when I was talking to on the Jeet Kune Do dialogues with Raymond Crow, he told the story of Lindsay Largusa of Villabril Largusa Kali fame, and there was a demonstration where Lindsay did a stick disarm with his feet, right? And as far as I understand, that was completely incidental, if not accidental. It was not a planned or rehearsed part of their demonstration. So I was very attracted to that idea of just having a general idea of what we'll do, and then you just go out there and you go with the flow, right? So then after that comes questions about Taki Kimura and James Lee, a question about private lessons, and a question about Bruce Lee's teaching philosophy. So Sifu Dan says that Cedro Bruce told him that he should always respect Taki and James as their seniors, as his seniors. And if you've ever experienced Inosanto live, you know that he has never once wavered in that regard when it comes to respecting his seniors. As a matter of fact, in this, this will be my first show and tell. So in this magazine, which is July 1988 of Inside Kung Fu, it's on page 44, I think it is. It's the one about Bruce Lee's ranking systems and what have you. And what you can see right here in this top corner is 6th rank is Dan Inosanto. And then 7th rank is Taki Kimura, and 8th rank is Bruce Lee, right? So when they devised this ranking system, which I think was in right here in 1988, Inosanto put Taki Kimura as his senior, right, at a rank higher than him, right? Okay, so there's that. When it came to private lessons, here's what he says. He says that the focus was on physical conditioning, right? So jump rope and hitting the heavy bag, using the kick shield, and then doing combinations on the focus mitts, right? And then doing sensitivity drills like the Chisao, and then also a lot of sparring. So I don't know about you, but to me, that sounds a lot like what we still do. But it also sounds to me like what any MMA or Muay Thai fighter would be doing in his training. Well, except for the Chisao, right? But they would probably, the Thai boxer and the MMA fighter would probably replace sensitivity drills like Chisao with clinch work, right? And then pummeling, and then in the BJJ with rolling or what have you, right? So sounds to me like what they were doing back in the 60s is still being done today inside of Jeet Kune Do and outside of Jeet Kune Do also. As for Bruce Lee's philosophy on teaching, what he says here is he firmly believed that the instructor was merely a guide, and most of you guys have heard this before in some form or fashion. He firmly believed that the instructor was merely a guide, not a dictator, and that the teacher is the pointer to the truth and not a giver of the truth, because the truth is always relative to certain situations. His basic principle as a teacher was to help the student to find his own version of truth. This philosophy of personal liberation led me, right, so I'm speaking for Dan Inosanto. This philosophy of personal liberation led me to new discoveries in the martial arts and helped me to grow both as a martial artist and as a human being. That open and inquiring mind toward all martial arts and aspects of life is what I believe is Bruce Lee's greatest gift. So I'll read that last part again. That open and inquiring mind toward all martial arts and aspects of life is what I believe is Bruce's greatest gift, which is something with which I think all of us would agree, that having an open and inquiring mind towards martial art and other aspects of life, that's the thing that leads to personal growth as a martial artist and as a human being, right? you can comment on that one too. Right? Okay, so then the question turns to the opening of the College Street gym, right? 628 College Street in Los Angeles, Chinatown. So this is what is referred to as the Chinatown gym, or the Los Angeles branch of the Junfan Kung Fu Institute, right? So Sifu Dan reveals that it was kind of his idea to get together a group of Kempo guys along with the handful of people. There were like 3 people who Bruce Lee trained behind Wayne Chan's pharmacy. So that was actually kind of like the first Los Angeles, or maybe the second Los Angeles training group, right? But then Inosanto suggested that some of the guys from the Kempo school and the Wayne Chan guys, they get together and open up a little place, and that would put some money into Bruce Lee's pocket. Because I don't think the I forget if the Green Hornet had started, or if the Green Hornet had been canceled, or whichever came first, right? So, but within 3 months, Bruce Lee had turned over the instructional duties to Dan Inosanto, and thereafter he would come by like once a week and check on stuff, right? And it said that Bruce Lee, wanted to use that free time to develop his own body. And also he hated big classes, which is something we've heard a number of times. It was a thing where he felt that to maintain the quality, it had to be one-on-one. And he was right. It's just like a boxing trainer. He can train maybe 2 or 3 guys at a time, but that's it. He wanted to know the person physically and psychologically from inside and out. That's the real reason, listen to this, right? That's the real reason why he rejected the idea of nationwide schools. That's not the way to bring out the art, Dan, he said to me. His system was never made for mass distribution. His system was never made for mass distribution. So here's another proverbial question for you. Could that be one of the reasons why there's been so much controversy in Jeet Kune Do over the years? Because in that a system that was never initially designed or originally designed for mass distribution ended up being distributed worldwide by an assortment of instructors from an assortment of Jeet Kune Do backgrounds, right? So maybe there's something to that. Feel free to answer that not so rhetorical question, right? So then the interviewer asked about the curriculum at the Chinatown school. And Sifu Dan says that Bruce Lee didn't want anything organized because he believed more in intuition. But Inosanto pointed out that you have to have a base before you can express freedom. So apparently they went round and round with it, and ultimately Cedro Bruce agreed that a curriculum was necessary, and he also let Sifu Dan have some input on it. And even though he allowed Sifu Dan to have a great deal of freedom when it came to the curriculum, he still pretty much controlled and advised on what should be taught. And then his advice was also to never become bound by the curriculum, right? So I was gonna tangent off here a little bit and talk to you about that influence, right? That whole idea about intuition as part and not organizing anything about the curriculum. But so I was going to tell you about how I organize my curriculum here in Miami at Unified Martial Art. But I think we'll save that for another time and another discussion or something, right? So if we go on to the other question. So then the question comes up about the difference between Junfan Kung Fu and Jeet Kune Do. The difference between Junfan Kung Fu and Jeet Kune Do. And Sifu Dan clearly states that Junfan is the base system for Jeet Kune Do, and that Junfan is what was taught in Seattle and in Oakland. But by 66 or so, by 1966, Bruce Lee had started adjusting the footwork, the on-guard position, the stances, and the angles of techniques to the point where it was not Wing Chun or modified Wing Chun anymore. And then by 1968, after, and these are his words, after much addition and subtraction to his Junfan method, he came up with the way of the intercepting fist, right? Okay, so now here, for me, is where it gets really interesting. Because the question is, Bruce said, absorb what is useful and reject what is useless, adding what is specifically your own. Isn't this a little confusing? Right? Now, you may recall that I've told you before that Bruce Lee never actually said those words. Those are words that were actually adapted by Sifu Inosanto, right? So in answering the question about absorb what is useful and what have you, here's what he says. It would be confusing if you don't have the right level of Jeet Kune Do understanding. So I'm going to say that again. It would be confusing if you don't have the right level of Jeet Kune Do understanding, right? So then he continues, he said, Bruce had a personal based system. He said that you had to capture the essence of each art. The essence is not the 3,000 techniques you have to learn from white belt to black belt. Whatever he absorbed from a system, it had to fit into his personal based system. In fact, even if you don't realize it, the criteria for absorbing are based on your conditioning as a practitioner of a particular style or a particular art. A judo man will absorb from wrestling in a very different way than a karate man. Bruce believed in giving the student experiences he could grow from, right? What the student absorbs from that experience is pretty much up to him. Don't forget that Bruce was advocating that each student find the cause of their own ignorance, which does mean not going to your instructor for answers. To be able to walk alone, you need a high level of JKD philosophy understanding, right? So I'm going to go back here and say his answer was, it would be confusing if you don't have the right level of Jeet Kune Do understanding. And then he says, to be able to walk alone, you need to have a high level of Jeet Kune Do philosophy understanding, right? Now, this is probably, the transcript of a live talk, just like I'm doing a live talk now, but I think it's significant, the slight change in language there. It is that philosophy which gives you the guidelines for your personal journey in the Jeet Kune Do art. You can put different arts together and the final product will not be Jeet Kune Do. He never wanted to accumulate unnecessary knowledge. What he added to the personal base system, what he added, he did because he was making what he had more efficient. So that goes to the whole thing about just what is it that constitutes Jeet Kune Do. And so we've talked about this before. There are a lot of people out there who are accumulating a lot of information and a lot of techniques and what have you, but some of them do not appear to be striving to run those techniques through the Jeet Kune Do filter and work on making those techniques more efficient, which is part of, we say it all the time, it is part of the daily decrease, right? The hacking away at the unessentials. So this is why it's important for people who are out there teaching the art of Jeet Kune Do to have a high degree, this is my opinion, to have a high degree of knowledge about the art and not just a high degree of skill, right? Like Sifu Dan says, whatever it is that you add, it has to fit your personal base system. So if part of your personal base system is efficiency, and why wouldn't it be, then you must ensure that what you're adding is not the accumulation of more and more techniques from different arts. So any amount of hybrid arts that you find out there, while on the surface it may sound like they're espousing the same philosophies as Jeet Kune Do, they really are not, right? Because remember that hybrid is a word that talks about taking dissimilar elements and forcing them together, not looking for the connecting thread, right? And turning these things into similar or complementary elements. That's not what a hybrid is. That's why you have gas and electric, which are not similar at all, right? So it goes back to what I said at the beginning, because I'm getting ready to wrap this up. That what Sifu Dan said was he was more impressed by Bruce Lee's mind than by his physical skill, right? So I think that in the final analysis, that's what we have to strive for. We have to strive to be knowledgeable about our Jeet Kune Do and not just skillful. Now, I tend to take it a little bit too far and end up, my top student, Miguel Colasanti, is on here, and he will be a testimony to this. He and I have a deal where when he is in class, he gives me the signal to stop talking so much and get back to the doing, right? And if I don't see the signal, he has permission to interrupt me, right? And force me to stop giving knowledge and give experiences for people to train, right? Okay, so that's it for today. A retrospective look at Dan Inosanto talking about Jeet Kune Do. Thanks for tuning in as always, and I hope that you got something from this. As usual, the I Love Jeet Kune Do series, the Quick Skill series, Volume 1 is available at ilovejeetkunዶ.com. And Mr. Wells, thank you once again. Okay, there we go. If Ray Wells doesn't show up, I always forget. Let me give you another shot of it. There you go. All right. Oh, and another friend of mine said that I should recommend to you guys that apparently on Facebook there's a setting for notifications so that you'll get a notification whenever I go live with the JKD broadcast or with the Jeet Kune Do dialogues, right? So I don't know where that setting is found, but it's Facebook notifications, right? So feel free to like and share and comment on this. I'll go through the comments after I've posted the video, and I'll comment back to you. This Friday, the Jeet Kune Do dialogues, episode number 11, I think it is, will feature Sifu Guru Mark Stewart, who will be hooking up with him from Thailand. Well, he's in Thailand. I won't be in Thailand, right? So I may have to change the time from 3 p.m. Eastern time to maybe later in the day, but I'll confirm that with him later this evening when we test the technology, right? Okay, so that's it. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. You guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Take care.